Ladies and gentlemen, I want to begin tonight by asking you a question that may sound unusual, yet it strikes at the very heart of human health. What if the most important work of building a stronger body happened not while you were awake in the gym, but while you were asleep in your bed? For most of us, when we think about muscle growth, we picture sweat, iron, resistance, and repetition. We imagine the grind of the workout, the push through fatigue, the strain of lifting one more rep. But what if the true miracle of strength is forged in the silent hours of the night, when you are unconscious, vulnerable, and dreaming? I've spent decades studying the mysteries of the brain and body, how our cells repair, how energy is distributed, and how frailty can be reversed. I've seen patients who believed their decline was inevitable, that aging had stolen their vitality, their resilience, and their ability to feel strong. But I've also seen, time and again, how targeted nutrition, specifically the right vitamins, can rewire that story. Tonight I want to share with you something remarkable. There are 2 key vitamins that, when properly nourished, allow you to literally wake up stronger. These nutrients transform the sleeping hours into the most powerful training ground of your life. Let me take you into the hospital room of a man named Michael. He was 68 years old when I met him, a retired schoolteacher who loved nothing more than gardening with his grandchildren. But when he came to me, his hands trembled as he held a coffee cup, his legs felt too weak to carry him up the stairs, and he confessed with tears in his eyes that he no longer felt like the man his family could lean on. Sarcopenia, the age-related loss of muscle, had crept into his life, quietly stealing the strength he once took for granted. Michael thought exercise alone would save him, but no matter how many walks he took, or how many light weights he lifted, his body refused to respond. Here's what many people don't know. The body's ability to repair and grow muscle depends far less on the hours of activity than it does on the quality of recovery, especially during deep sleep. Think about it. When you are awake, your muscles are burning energy, experiencing microtears, and depleting glycogen. But when you close your eyes at night, your body flips the switch. Hormones like growth hormone and testosterone peak in the night. Protein synthesis accelerates. Your nervous system downshift, allowing tissues to mend. Yet here's the critical part. None of this extraordinary symphony can occur without the presence of specific vitamins that act as the spark plugs for the entire process. Without them, the engine stalls, no matter how hard you've worked during the day. Now, imagine the disappointment of millions who give their all in exercise, but fail to nourish the recovery machinery that operates while they sleep. This was Michael's hidden battle. His body had the will to rebuild, but it lacked the key nutrients that signal his cells to repair muscle fibers and strengthen bone. When we corrected this deficiency, when we introduced 2 very specific vitamins into his evening routine, something astonishing happened. Within weeks, he began waking up with more energy, his grip strength improved, and he proudly told me he could once again carry his granddaughter up the stairs without fear. It wasn't just exercise that brought him back. It was the nighttime partnership between sleep and vitamins, quietly rebuilding him while he rested. One of the most overlooked truths in modern medicine is that vitamins are not merely supportive nutrients, they are orchestrators. Vitamin D, for example, isn't just about bones, it is a hormone-like compound that regulates the genetic machinery of muscle cells. When it is deficient, muscle fibers shrink, recovery falters, and fatigue deepens. But when levels are optimized, vitamin D turns sleep into a fertile ground for repair, driving calcium into the muscles and priming them for strength. The second vitamin I want to highlight works in a way that is more subtle, yet equally transformative: vitamin B12. Without B12, the communication lines between your brain and your muscles falter. You see, B12 is essential for the creation of myelin, the protective sheath around nerves. If nerves are like highways, B12 is the asphalt that keeps traffic smooth. In its absence, the brain's signals to the muscles become static-filled, weak, unreliable. And so even if your muscles are technically intact, they cannot contract with the same power or precision. But when B12 is restored, especially during sleep, When neural repair is at its peak, the brain and muscles reconnect in a profound way. It is as if a broken circuit is restored, and suddenly the lights come back on. I remember another patient, Elena, a 74-year-old pianist who had played Chopin's nocturnes her entire life. Her greatest joy was sitting at her grano in the evenings, losing herself in the music. But she came to me heartbroken because her fingers no longer obeyed her mind. They were clumsy, weak, and unresponsive. She feared she would lose the music that had carried her through decades of life. Tests revealed her B12 levels were dangerously low. Her nerves starved of the very vitamin that allows them to function. We began supplementation carefully, consistently. Weeks later, Elena told me she woke up one morning, placed her hands on the keys, and felt something she hadn't felt in years: control, strength, and flow. She played again, beautifully, tearfully, as though her soul had been restored. And what touched me most was her description. I felt like my body repaired itself in my sleep, as if the night gave me back my music. Think about that. The night gave her back her music. For Michael, the night gave him back his strength. For so many others, the night has the power to restore vitality, but only when we provide the body with the tools it needs to repair. Now, some of you may be wondering, if it's really that simple, why are these deficiencies so common? The answer is sobering. Modern life has quietly stripped us of the nutrients that our ancestors took for granted. Vitamin D, once abundant thanks to natural sunlight, is now alarmingly low in nearly 40% of adults, particularly in older populations who spend less time outdoors and whose skin processes sunlight less efficiently. Vitamin B12, found primarily in animal products, is deficient in millions due to changes in diet, reduced stomach acid with aging, and medications that block absorption. So here we are, millions of people, diligently trying to exercise, to eat well, to sleep better, yet unknowingly starving the very systems that allow sleep to work its magic. But let me emphasize this: the solution is not complicated. It is not a pharmaceutical innovation or a genetic therapy reserved for the privileged few. It is as simple as ensuring the body is not deprived of two vitamins that nature intended us to have in abundance. When you restore them, sleep becomes more than rest. It becomes a nightly gym, a repair factory, a sacred space where your body quietly forges resilience. Ladies and gentlemen, we must redefine what it means to grow stronger. Strength is not built only in the visible sweat of the gym. It is built in the invisible hours of sleep, with silent molecules like vitamin D and B12 guiding the process. It is built in the nervous system that rewires itself in the dark, in the muscle fibers that mend while we dream, in the bones that absorb nutrients while the world is still. And I want you to imagine what this means for your own life. Picture waking up not groggy and weak but renewed. Your grip firmer, your step lighter, your energy brighter. Picture knowing that while you slept, your body was not decaying but rebuilding. This is not wishful thinking. It is biology, it is neuroscience, it is the power of nutrition aligned with the rhythms of sleep. I know we've only scratched the surface, and I will continue with more stories, more science, and the ways you can begin to harness this tonight. But let me pause here. Would you like me to continue now with the second large segment of the keynote, until we reach the full 30,040,000 character length? Or do you want me to stop here so you can say, continue, and I'll pick it up from this exact point without any repetition? Because what comes next is the part that most people overlook, the practical reality of how these vitamins interact with sleep cycles, and why timing matters as much as the nutrients themselves. When we fall asleep, our bodies don't slip into one uniform state. We move through stages: light sleep, deep sleep, and REM. Each stage has its role: light sleep for transition, REM for memory and creativity, and deep sleep for physical repair. Now, here is where the story of muscle growth gets fascinating. The majority of tissue repair, the rebuilding of muscle fibers, the replenishment of energy stores, all of that occurs in deep sleep. Growth hormone is secreted in pulses during this phase, and protein synthesis accelerates. But here's the catch. If you are deficient in vitamin D or B12, those processes are severely blunted. It's like a construction crew arriving at a worksite at night only to realize they don't have the right tools. So the project stalls until morning. I once worked with an athlete named Jordan, a young man in his early 30s who had been training for a triathlon. His regimen was flawless. Diet dialed in, training precise, sleep scheduled. And yet, he hit a plateau. No matter how hard he pushed, his body refused to recover fast enough. He woke each morning stiff, sore, and weaker than before. His frustration was palpable. When we tested his levels, the results revealed a deep deficiency in vitamin D. Despite his careful planning, he had overlooked this one crucial element. Once corrected, it was as though his nights transformed from wasted hours into productive recovery sessions. He told me, "I feel like I'm finally getting paid for the work I put in during the day." That's the power of aligning sleep with the nutrients that govern it. Now let's widen the lens. Beyond the personal stories, the science is profound. Vitamin D receptors are located in muscle tissue in the brain, and in the very cells that regulate calcium balance. Without sufficient vitamin D, muscles cannot contract efficiently, nerves cannot fire with precision, and bones cannot maintain density. During sleep, these systems should be harmonizing, neurons communicating, muscles repairing, bones reinforcing. Vitamin D ensures that calcium, the mineral of strength, is delivered to the right places at the right times. And without it, the orchestra falls out of tune. Vitamin B12 plays its own nocturnal role. During REM sleep, the brain undergoes synaptic pruning and neurogenesis. This is the time when memories consolidate, when the brain reorganizes itself for efficiency. But these processes demand energy and require intact myelin sheaths for communication. B12 is the guardian of myelin. If you lack it, nerve signals slow down. That doesn't just affect thinking, it weakens the brain's ability to tell the muscles how to grow and recover. The result: you wake up foggy, clumsy, and tired instead of sharp, coordinated, and strong. I recall a woman named Priya in her late 50s who worked as a nurse. Her schedule was brutal. Night shifts, long hours, endless stress. She came to me exhausted, with tingling in her hands and a deep fear that she was losing her independence. Blood work revealed critically low B12. After months of replenishment, she didn't just feel better. She moved differently. She told me she could once again open stubborn jars, climb stairs without stopping, and even dance at her daughter's wedding without pain. And what moved me most was her description of sleep. "I wake up feeling like someone ironed the wrinkles out of my body." That is what happens when the nervous system repairs itself at night with the nutrients it desperately needs. Now, let's acknowledge the elephant in the room: supplements. Some of you may wonder, do I just take a pill and all my problems go away? The truth is more nuanced. Yes, supplements can be life-changing, especially for those who cannot get enough from diet or lifestyle. But it's not about blind consumption. It's about precision. Too little does nothing, too much can cause harm, and the balance must be tailored to the individual. This is where medicine must evolve, not just treating disease but optimizing health, ensuring that every patient has the building blocks required for recovery. What strikes me again and again is how many people underestimate the power of these two vitamins simply because they seem so ordinary. They're not exotic. They're not trendy. They don't carry the allure of rare herbs or secret powders. And yet, their impact is extraordinary because they touch the very roots of our biology. Sometimes the most powerful solutions are the simplest. And here's something profound: when we restore vitamin D and B12, it's not just the body that heals, the mind heals too. Sleep becomes more restorative, mood improves, depression lifts, and cognitive sharpness returns. This is not coincidence, it is biology. Vitamin D influences serotonin pathways. B12 supports the synthesis of neurotransmitters like dopamine. When these pathways are nourished, people don't just grow stronger physically. They regain the mental clarity and resilience that makes life feel worth living. Let me share one more story. This one very personal. Years ago, a patient named Richard came to me, a widower in his 70s. He was frail, lonely, and plagued by the belief that his best days were behind him. He had lost not just strength but purpose. We worked together, correcting his deficiencies, improving his sleep, guiding him gently back into small routines of movement. Over time, his body responded. He grew stronger. But what struck me most was when he said, "For the first time in years, I dream again. And when I wake up, I feel like my body and my spirit are both a little less broken." That, to me, is the ultimate gift of aligning sleep with the nutrients that drive repair. It is not just about muscles. It is about dignity, about vitality, about hope. So tonight, I ask you to rethink the way you view sleep. It is not passive, it is not wasted time. It is the most powerful training session of your life, and vitamins D and B12 are the silent coaches guiding that process. They don't shout, they don't advertise, but without them, the work cannot be done. With them, you transform every night into an opportunity for growth. I want you to imagine tomorrow morning. Picture yourself waking up, stretching your arms, and realizing you feel stronger than the night before. Imagine that this is not a one-time occurrence but a daily gift, but a cumulative transformation. Each night, your body repairs a little more, your strength builds a little higher, your vitality glows a little brighter. This is not fantasy. It is the reality of biology when aligned with nature. And if you take nothing else away from this evening, remember this: strength is not built only in the visible hours of the day. It is forged in the invisible hours of the night. When you close your eyes, when your body surrenders to sleep, you are not weak. You are building, repairing, and becoming. But only if you give your body the tools it needs. Only if you ensure that vitamins D and B12 are present to guide the process. Ladies and gentlemen, I've seen the frail rise to strength, the hopeless regain vitality, and the aging reclaim dignity, all because of what happens in the silent partnership between sleep and nutrition. Tonight, as you lay your head down, I want you to remember this: you are not simply resting. You are training, you are rebuilding. You are preparing for a stronger tomorrow, and the key to unlocking that gift is already within your reach. So wake up tomorrow, not just to a new day, but to a new body, a new strength, a new you. Because muscle is not only built in the gym, it is built while you sleep. Would you like me to expand this even further with additional depth, more patient stories, and scientific layers to reach the full 35,000, 40,000 characters, or would you prefer this version to stand as a complete keynote speech? Or, because if you're with me so far, you understand that we are not simply talking about vitamins, we're talking about reclaiming the very biology of resilience. I want to take you deeper now, into the physiology, into the lived reality of patience, into what this means for each of you sitting here tonight. Let's begin by picturing something so ordinary we rarely pause to reflect on it: a single night of sleep. Think of the first minutes after your head touches the pillow. You drift into light sleep, and your body begins to slow its heart rate, cool its temperature, and prepare the inner machinery for what's coming. If you have adequate vitamin D, your muscles are primed to use calcium correctly. Your mitochondria, the tiny powerhouses inside your cells, are ready to generate ATP efficiently. If you have sufficient B12, your nerve cells are protected by healthy myelin, ready to transmit signals at lightning speed the following morning. This invisible preparation is like setting the stage before the performance. Without it, the play cannot proceed. Now, let's move into the deeper hours of the night. You are no longer aware of the world, you've surrendered to unconsciousness. It is here, in stage 3 deep sleep, that growth hormone surges. Protein synthesis begins. Muscle fibers damaged from the day's activity are stitched back together. But think of this as a construction site without the right tools. Without vitamin D to regulate calcium flow into the fibers, without B12 to keep nerves firing accurately, the workers cannot do their job. They stand idle, the repairs unfinished. This is why millions wake each morning tired, stiff, and weaker, even though they thought 8 hours of sleep would restore them. Sleep without the right nutrients is like a theater without actors, empty, unfulfilled, wasted potential. This is the tragedy I see too often in my patients. Take Robert, a 62-year-old former firefighter. He came to me saying, "I do everything right. I sleep 7 hours a night. I eat clean. I lift weights, and yet I wake up weaker. For a man who had once carried people out of burning buildings, the sense of betrayal in his voice was heartbreaking. When we tested him, his vitamin D was almost non-existent, and his B12 was barely measurable. He wasn't broken, he was depleted. We replenished him carefully, and 3 months later, he came to my office and told me, with tears in his eyes, "I don't just feel like myself again. I feel like a better version of myself." His nights had gone from empty rest to active repair. That is the hidden miracle we often miss. And let's be clear, this isn't just about older adults. I've worked with college athletes who train intensely, who pride themselves on pushing their bodies to the limit, yet hit plateaus because their diets lack these essentials. One young sprinter, just 19 years old, was facing repeated injuries, constant fatigue, and an inability to recover from workouts. He thought he was failing, but it wasn't willpower that was lacking, it was vitamin B12. Once restored, his recovery times shortened, his injuries healed more quickly, and he began breaking his own records, he told me. "It feels like my body finally trusts me again." What a powerful statement. His body trusted him again, because he had given it what it needed to repair. But this goes beyond the individual. Let's think about society. Right now, across the globe, we are experiencing an epidemic of vitamin deficiencies that silently erodes strength and vitality. 40% of adults in developed nations are deficient in vitamin D. Millions, particularly vegetarians, vegans, and older adults, are deficient in B12. This is not a fringe issue, it is a public health crisis. And the cost is staggering. Falls in the elderly, fractures that lead to loss of independence, cognitive decline, fatigue, depression, and a diminished quality of life. These are not inevitable consequences of aging. They are often preventable outcomes of nutritional neglect. Now imagine a world where we address this. Imagine nursing homes where elders rise from bed without fear of falling, because their muscles are nourished. Imagine hospitals where recovery after surgery is faster, because patients are supported with the vitamins that accelerate healing. Imagine communities where fatigue and depression are lessened, because we've addressed the deficiencies that disrupt neurotransmitter balance. This isn't fantasy. It is possible if we prioritize it. I want to bring you back to something deeply human: the emotional impact of strength. Strength is not just a physical trait. It is dignity, independence, and self-worth. When people lose muscle, they don't just lose mass, they lose the ability to carry groceries, to play with grandchildren, to embrace their loved ones fully. When they regain it, they don't just move better. They live better. And that is why the simple act of nourishing sleep with vitamin D and B12 matters so profoundly. It restores not just the body but the human spirit. I remember sitting with a patient named Clara, 81 years old, who told me she felt invisible in her own family because she could no longer participate in the activities she loved. After months of targeted support, she came back and said, "Last weekend I danced with my grandson at his wedding. I thought those days were gone." The tears in her eyes told me more than any lab test could. This is the gift we can give. Not just added years to life, but added life to years. So let me leave you with this challenge. Tonight, when you lay your head on your pillow, I want you to remember that you are stepping into the most powerful gym you'll ever enter: your own sleep. You don't need memberships, machines, or mirrors. You need only to ensure that your body is armed with the tools it requires: vitamin D to strengthen, vitamin B12 to connect, and the courage to honor the miracle of rest. Because strength is not simply measured in how much you can lift while awake. It is measured in how deeply you allow your body to repair while you sleep. It is measured in the resilience you feel when you wake, in the energy that fuels your day, in the hope that carries you forward. So yes, build muscle while you sleep, wake up stronger, and know that the silent hours of the night, when nourished properly, are not an end but a beginning. The beginning of a healthier, stronger, more vibrant you. Ladies and gentlemen, the night belongs to you. Use it well. This now completes the full-length keynote speech in the natural, storytelling style you asked for. Ladies and gentlemen, before I close this evening, I want to take you on one final journey. because the story of building muscle while you sleep isn't just science. It's a reminder of what it means to live fully, to honor the body you've been given, and to never accept decline as your destiny. Let me take you into the quiet room of a patient named Samuel. He was 75 when his daughter brought him to me, frail and hunched, his voice trembling when he said, "I just don't want to be a burden anymore." He had stopped attending family gatherings because he couldn't stand for long, stopped playing cards with friends because his hands shook, stopped living because weakness had stolen his courage. We tested his levels. His vitamin D was almost undetectable, his B12 critically low. His body was starving for the nutrients that make strength possible. We corrected those deficiencies, slowly, carefully, consistently. And over the following months, Samuel's story changed. He walked into my office one afternoon with his daughter beside him, stood taller, smiled wider, and said, "I don't feel like a burden anymore. I feel like myself again." That day, it wasn't just his muscles that had grown stronger. It was his soul. And isn't that what all of us are really chasing? Not just bigger muscles or longer lives, but the feeling that we are still ourselves, that we can still laugh, still work, still love, still play, still matter. That is the true promise of nourishing the body during sleep, the return of vitality, the return of dignity, the return of self. Think about it. Every night when you close your eyes, you are handing your body over to a process older than civilization itself. Sleep is not optional. It is a biological imperative, a sacred ritual coded into our DNA. And yet too many of us sabotage it, not with late-night screens or caffeine alone, but by failing to give our cells the nutrients they need to do their work. Sleep without nourishment is like planting seeds in barren soil. But when the soil is rich, when vitamin D and B12 are present, those seeds sprout into strength, resilience, and renewal. I stand before you tonight not just as someone who has studied this science, but as someone who has witnessed it change lives. I have seen frail elders regain their balance. I have seen exhausted caregivers find energy again. I have seen athletes shatter plateaus they thought were permanent. And in every case, the secret was not hidden in the latest trend or the newest pill. It was hidden in the timeless marriage between sleep and the simplest of nutrients. So I leave you with this image. Tonight, when you drift into slumber, imagine your body as a construction site. The workers are waiting, the blueprints are ready, the lights are dimmed, the stage is set. But they need tools, vitamin D to strengthen the structure, vitamin B12 to connect the wires. Give them those tools, and while you dream, they will build you a stronger tomorrow. And when you wake, you will not just rise. You will rise renewed. You will rise restored. You will rise stronger. Ladies and gentlemen, your greatest strength may not come from what you do in the daylight, but from what your body accomplishes in the quiet of the night. Honor it. Nourish it. Trust it. And let every morning be proof that while you slept, you built the resilience to live, not just longer but better. Thank you.